Hey, how's it going YouTube? Welcome back to a brand new video. I'm Landon Dallasing, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We are on the road to 4 million subscribers, and also if you like these videos, hit the like button. Let's see if we can get us trending on the YouTube homepage. So let's just get right into this one. Let's not waste any time here. This is the top 10 police officers who have been arrested. Starting us off on this list, at number 10, we have 42-year-old Officer Jeremy Newton, who was caught up in a prostitution operation, and this took place in Rochester, New York. There were 2 other men involved in this case, but they were not officers. They seemed to be friends of Officer Jeremy Newton. It seems like this guy was working as a part-time officer and a part-time pimp. He would buy girls and bring them to public places. This is one corrupt police officer. He's supposed to be protecting citizens and arresting people if they're involved in prostitution, but he finds himself on both sides of the law. Next up, at number 9, we have a Toronto police officer. This is where I live. Well, he was convicted of attempted murder in a fatal shooting of Sammy Adams. Sammy was on a streetcar with a knife. The streetcar stopped and everyone ran off the streetcar. Police were called and Sammy stayed on the streetcar and he refused to drop his knife.
Drop the knife!
It was a very scary scene. I actually remember listening to this on the news. Police had drawn their guns at him, and all of a sudden, there's a video. You can hear the police officers opening fire on this kid. Obviously, I can't show you guys that video, but this caused huge controversy because after watching the full video, there didn't seem like there was a reason to shoot Sammy. So the police officer identified for wrongfully shooting this guy was Officer James Forcello, and Officer James was investigated, and he was found guilty of wrongdoing. So he was arrested and he was sentenced to 6 years behind bars. Moving into number 8, we have a Chicago police officer, Jason Van Dyke, who has been charged with 16 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm. Officer Jason Van Dyke was also charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder. He becomes Chicago's first officer charged with first-degree murder since the 1980s. Back in 2014, he shot Laquan McDonald to death. Laquan was a black teenager who was walking in the middle of the road waving a knife around. The police officer felt threatened and he opened fire all of his bullets. He shot 17 times, hitting the teenager 16 times. This is just overkill. It took 400 days to release the dashcam video to the public of this incident. What was on the dashcam and what was in the police reports were 2 completely different things. If this officer is convicted, he could face life in prison. Number 7, we have a white cop who shot an unarmed black man. This seems to be a very popular trend in the States. The police officer was identified as Officer Michael Slager. He was actually just found guilty back in December for second-degree murder. Officer Martin Slager tried to cover this up, but video footage shows Martin Slager chasing Walter Scott, who was the black man. Walter was unarmed and posed a no threat. U.S. District Judge David Norton sentenced the officer to 20 years in prison. Number 6, we have an airport police officer, Theodore Dyer, who was sent to prison in 2013 for raping a 9-year-old girl. I mean, is this real life right now? This is just sickening. So Theodore's case went to court and it only lasted 1 day. It only took 10 minutes for the jurors to convict Theodore of first-degree criminal sexual conduct. The 9-year-old girl appeared in court to testify against the man, and with her being there, it actually sped up his conviction. Less than a year after he was sent to prison, he was murdered by his cellmate, allegedly for bragging about the crime. I guess movies are right about the whole concept about, convicts don't like other convicts who are sexual predators. Moving into number 5, we have Drew Peterson, who was sentenced to 38 years in prison for the murder of his 3rd wife. Her body was found in a bathtub with extensive bruising and a large gash in her skull, which was caused by a stab wound. This crime took place in 2004, and it wasn't until 2012 where he was convicted. Back in 2007, his 4th wife disappeared, and that's when Drew Peterson started to make international headline news. So this guy killed his 3rd wife, and we don't know what happened to his 4th wife, but it might be safe to say that he killed her as well. It's just so messed up. Number 4, we have an American former police officer, Lori Benbinick, convicted in 1982 of murdering her husband's ex-wife. She was sentenced to life in prison. Lori always maintained her innocence, but in 1990, about 8 years into her sentence, she was able to escape prison. She ran to Canada from the States, and she was able to stay on the run for 3 months until she was caught in Thunder Bay, Ontario. She was captured after she was published on America's Most Wanted. She became international news. Everyone knew about her. Everyone knew to look out for her. Well, at the age of 52 years old, she passed away. Her story was so messed up and interesting that her life was actually actually turned into a TV show. Number 3, we have a retired New York police officer who pleaded guilty to child sex offenses. This right here is Donald Clark, who was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He was an officer from 1974 to 2006, which was over 30 years. Officer Donald admitted that he would often be alone with children while he was on duty, and he would do things to them. He has been sexually assaulting minors for over 40 years. I have no idea how he got away with it for so damn long. It's so insane because he just received 2 years behind bars. It just makes me sick, and it makes absolutely no sense. A New York City police commissioner is next up at number 2. We're talking about Bernard Kerik. This guy right here, he was the police commissioner during the 9/11 attack, while Bernard was sentenced to a federal prison for tax evasion and fraud. He once accepted a $250,000 interest-free loan from an Israeli billionaire. Bernard was supposed to report it, but he didn't. Investigators found out about this and looked into the case and found 8 felony tax and false statements. So he was charged and sentenced to 48 months in federal prison and a 3-year supervised release. Finally, at number 1, we have Agent Garcia, who was just sentenced to 80 years in prison after he was caught laundering money and drug trafficking. Agent Garcia's crimes went on for a very long time. Garcia has had an interesting life. He has been drafted into the army where he actually became a military policeman. From there, he started an acting career. He appeared in Enter the Dragon, yes, Bruce Lee movie. After that movie, he appeared in 5 more movies, and then he became a DEA agent with the LAPD. It seemed like this guy was going into the right direction until he became corrupt. Well, there you guys have it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys all in the next most amazing top 10 video.